Okay, now we're going to look at using a while loop to get input from a user, and we'll have a Sentinel value that'll terminate the input. So the idea here is we're going to get data from a user, and we don't know how much data they're going to enter. And they're going to give us a particular value that tells us when they're done. So essentially here I'm going to kind of create a simulation of a teacher entering a series of grades, and we're going to return the average of the grades. So let's see how that'll work here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, and I've just set up the NetBeans, but I'm going to write the code with you. We'll start by doing our pseudocode. So the basic idea, again, is we're going to input grades from the teacher, and the grades are going to be basically 0 to 100%. 0 means that you didn't actually there, so you weren't there. And so we have to find a value that's out of that range. And we could use a value like 110, which is kind of awkward. So we're going to use -1 as the sentinel. Okay? So that's not going to ever change. So that suggests a final. So I'll just go ahead and do that right off. So final. And these are going to be double val. Let's see. Let's think about this for a second. So although they represent percents, they're going to be integer entries. So final int equals, oops, forgot I have to give it a name. Sentinel, I had that misspelled initially. I had to rename my project and everything. Equals -1. Whoops. There we go. Okay. And then the pseudocode is, well, let me think about this a second. Okay, so we're going to generate an average. That'll be a double average, and initially that'll be 0, right? And then to compute the average, we need the total of the grades, and that'll be an integer because as we add ints, we can't get a double value from that. So int total, and well, let's just make this total of, well, total's fine. I was going to say total of grades, but total's fine. And of course, that'll be 0 to start with. And then we just need a value to read. So int, this will be current grade. I usually use cur like that as a short for current. And we'll set that to 0 too initially. Okay, let's do our pseudocode now. So again, we're going to prompt for the grade. And then check for the sentinel. And then if it is, and the input. Otherwise, add the current grade to the total and continue. Okay? So we do need a variable to control our loop as well. And let's go ahead and create a Boolean for this. Boolean done equals false. Okay? And basically that means that our loop will be something like while not done. So not done is true. So while not done would mean run. Okay? All right, so this whole thing is in the loop, so let's start with the loop. So while not done, I'll put in a loop body. Oops, I got some red ink in there. Did I destroy something here? Oh, that's just because I haven't got the code finished yet. Okay, not a problem. All right. It is kind of annoying that when you start typing it says you got an error when I guess you can get used to that though. Okay, so let's go ahead and one of the things I always do, by the way, when I create the loops is always put the beginning and the ending in. So my block is actually correct. I can actually run this code now. It won't do much, but it's always good to code that way. It's also very good to code in such a way that you test as you go, so you don't end up writing 2 or 3 hours of code and then try to run it. You know, you write a little bit of code, run it, and then continue. Now, this is a pretty simple problem, and I can't really do much with that. I could go ahead and test my prompt and all that. Okay, so when we do input, we always have to prompt the user. So we'll use the Sout tab, but you know I'm going to go ahead and make that a print, as I've explained before, and that leaves the prompt on the same line that the user will type in the data. So enter the next grade or -1 to quit. Okay, that sounds pretty good. Let's put a colon in here, and we got a space. Okay, and then we'll check for the Sentinel. So here's where my if-then-else loop will be. So if, and then, oops, I forgot. You know what? I didn't get the input, did I? So when I wrote my pseudocode, I forgot to put that in. So this would be read the value, and if we come back up here, oops, let me go ahead and make some more room here. So I have to read the value in, and then that'll get assigned to the current grade, right? So read the value for the current grade. Okay, now I don't have that. So what do I need to do input? I need a scanner. So I didn't do that. I'll have to set that up. So scanner in equals new scanner. And I'm reading from the console, so I use the system.in stream. And then I'll go ahead and do that. And of course, I have to include the import the scanner class, which is in the Java util class. So if I click over here, add import for Java util scanner, that's what I want. And that takes my red line away, and so I'm ready to go. Okay? And so then this input here, read the value for the current grade, is going to be cur grade equals in dot next int. Okay? Now this is not bulletproof, so if the user types something other than an integer, that'll break the program. And I'm going to leave it that way for now just to show you the logic clearly, but then maybe we could go back and refactor this to make it more robust. Obviously our goal is to always write robust bulletproof programs. Okay? Okay, so if cur grade is not equal to Sentinel, then we do all this. Else, we're done. Okay, and then we're going to print out our display results. So display results. Okay. Actually, there's a bit more there. So this is going to be calculate the average and display results. Okay. All right. Let's go on back up here. Whoops. So I made a mistake there. It should be camel case. So that fixes that. And And I can get rid of this. It's kind of unnecessary to leave that in because it's right there in the code. And then the otherwise is actually the else, right? And we don't need the and continue because that's really the end of the while block, right? So while not done. Okay, hang on a second. If current grade is not equal to Sentinel, then we also need to set our done to true. So right now done is false. That means we're reading input. When we see the Sentinel, we have to set done equals true because the user just told us that we were done. So now that's true. When we come back up here to the loop, not true is false, and the while loop will halt. And so now we've got everything set up. Our logic is good. And let's go ahead and do the processing here. So if the current grade is not the Sentinel, that means that we just got a new current grade. And so we're going to add that to our total. Okay? So total equals total plus current grade. And again, I'm not going to actually do it that way. That's what it means, but let's use the Java shortcut instead. So total plus equal cur grade. So the shortcut just makes it easier to type it in. It means exactly the same thing. I don't want to do it twice, so I've commented this out. So total plus equal current grade adds the current grade to whatever we already have in the total. Sorry about that. Okay, so done equals true. We're going to calculate the average. So the average is equal to the total divided by the number of grades. And you know what? I forgot to increment and count how many grades I have too. Do we have a variable for that? Current grade total. So we need a count of how many grades. So we'll call that num grades. That'll be an integer. That can't be a fraction. So num grades. I could have said total grades, but that would be a little confusing since I'm using total as the sum of the grades. So sum of the grades might have been a better variable name here. Sum of grades, right? And num grades is really how many grades. We don't need to put that in there. Okay. So right here where I say current grade is not equal to Sentinel, that means I just got another grade. And so I want to go ahead and increment my num grades. So num grades, and you know I'm not going to show you the longhand of this. I think you're getting this. So that's an increment. So that just adds 1 to indicate that we just added another grade. Okay, coming down here, the average is the total divided by the num of the grades. And then we're going to display our results. Salt tab, you entered plus num grades plus grades. Salt tab again. The average is plus average. And by the way, this might be a place where we want to use our printf because it'll be a floating point calculation. It might have way too many places. So let's go ahead and run this first to make sure it works. So I'll go ahead and run my code. And whoops. Oh, there it is. Okay, just that's kind of weird. Okay, so again, I want a number of values. I'm just going to enter 5 grades. Let's say 23, 100, 45, 69. These students aren't doing too well. I said 5, right? So 95. Okay, now put in the -1. That means I'm done. You entered 5 grades. The average is 66.0. That looks pretty good for an average. I'm going to guess that that's correct. I could go ahead and run these through a calculator to make sure. Or I could try again with a value that I know will give me a certain average. Okay, a couple of things. It's not very pretty, so I think we need a prompt at the very beginning. And then this is okay. This, you entered the 5 grades. The average is 66.0. However, I think I kind of got lucky here that the average turned out to be even. And so let me play around with this a little bit. Let's see if we can get an average of like 66% here, right? So let me run it again. All right, so let's say 33, 33, 33, 33, -1. I'm kind of surprised I'm not getting a horrible floating point number here. Let me just take a look and make sure that I'm doing. Let's see. Yeah, because really when you divide, so the average is a floating point number, right? Yep, it's a double. Okay. Well, I could try it again and get a value like that. Let's talk about a little bit of input checking here. So, no, we'll do that in the next program. In fact, what I'll do is I'll enhance this program and show you how we use the while loop. Okay, so I do think I'm going to go ahead and change this here to a printf. And then I'll go ahead and put in my percentage, and we'll give this 5.2. So that means use 5 characters for the display and 2 decimal places. And then I just have to modify this here. So we just put average in there like that. Okay, so I'm going to print this string out. The average is, and then it'll use average right here, and it'll display that to 2 places. So let's run that real quick and see how that looks. And now I'm just going to do a bunch of random ones. Let's put a 0 in there too. 23, 89. Okay, and then -1. Whoa! Let's see. You entered 8 grades. Unknown format expression. Oh, you know what? I made a mistake here, didn't I? I forgot to put the F in. So this is for a floating point number. Oh, let me run it again. All right. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oops, damn it. Sorry about that. My mouse slides off the board. Okay, let's see. Let's put another 100 in, and then -1 to end. And so we entered 10 grades. There's our thing, and of course this is the compiler message. And because I used the printf without a new line, it doesn't show. I mean, it runs it together. I can fix that real easy by just throwing the new line in here. That's not really going to be an issue when you run the program. It's only when you run it within NetBeans. Okay, so we'll put that new line in there. Real quick, I'll run it one more time just to show you how that changed. And again, 23, 34, 45, 67, 78, 90, 100, 100, 100, and how about a -1 to end? Okay, so I entered 9 grades, average is 70. Okay, so again, the idea of the Sentinel is we use that when we're doing an input loop. We don't know how many values we're going to get, and so we simply do input until we see the Sentinel, and that tells us we're done. And the Sentinel has to be a value that can't be a normal data point. So here I'm entering grades. They have to be from 0 to 100. 0 means you didn't show up or did horrible and completely failed. 100 is the highest grade you can get. And then a -1, you can't get that, and that's the Sentinel. So the Sentinel has to be a value that can't possibly be a regular data point. And so again, we use the while loop. So this is how we do a Sentinel-based input. Again, I did not bulletproof this program. So one thing that I didn't do here is I assume right here where I read this in that the user actually entered an integer, okay? And what I could do is I could go ahead and put a test in there with the has next int, and basically I could then skip all of this. There's kind of a subtlety there. I'm going to show you this in a different program, so I just mentioned it now, but I'll show you how to fix that later and actually create bulletproof input that loops until the user gives you a good value. Okay, hope you're enjoying the videos. Code on, dude.